So, what's up, guys? There's tube amp guitar players. There's a noise you don't really want to hear. The amp is microphonic. I was playing this the other day, and this is my 1968 Super Reverb modified by Tommy Cougar. Probably my favorite amp ever. I don't know why. Tommy just gets the most out of these amps, and it's been, my main amp. It is extremely heavy, so I tend to use the wood panel Cougar head that is pretty much designed like a Super Reverb with a little more output. The reverb cables, everything was microphonic in the amp for me, plugging into the input to, so it's a good opportunity to talk about something that I think is extremely important. I'm going to let the amp run while I'm talking to see if it makes any noises. But, if you're a player and you're maintaining stuff, especially your amps, some things that I feel, in my opinion, that you should have on hand if you want to, you want to keep your tone healthy, you want to keep your stuff, going at 100%, you want to be up to par, you want everything to be running good, running strong, and you don't want any breakdowns, and you don't want to be caught in a situation where you're borrowing an amp or waiting for stuff to come in the mail to fix one. And not saying that power surges and blown components can happen, because they do. You can blow some heater resistors, you can blow filter caps, you know what I mean? Tommy is the guy that modifies all my amps, but as far as, repairing something, if a capacitor is leaky or a resistor can pop, I can usually go in there and find it myself and walk through and find the fix. A little disclaimer now before working on your own stuff. If you're not comfortable with it, you don't have, there's a great way to learn, and I think, especially with this stuff and electronics and voltages that can kill you, the right way to learn first is maybe to hit the books. Don't be stupid like I am and just shove your fingers in stuff and hope for the best. I pretty much learned with trial by fire, and I just, started fixing my own stuff because I couldn't pay people to fix it. And you learn, you break some more stuff, but you learn as you go, and that's just what I've done. But some of the things I like to have, cheap cordless drill, you could probably hear it through the amp. But, this a cheap cordless drill just to pull the chassis apart, pull everything apart. Really helps if you're working on your own guitars, you're working on your own amps. This is a must-have. A really good multimeter, digital multimeter. You can measure your voltage, you can measure resistance. This one actually measures capacitance, and it measures transistor gain ratings over here. This is a Radio Shack joint. It's been really dependable. It's done everything I need. Super cool to have. It's got a USB port back there too. I think it's for updates or something like that. But this has just been a great tool, and any of those guys that are out there modding their own stuff and throwing pickups in and capacitors and treble bleeds and fixing amps and fixing tubes, you know what I mean? There's a lot of guys with these. It's just a necessity, a must-have tool. Also, save a chopstick, because this is not conductive. You can't pass electricity through this. Always keep one hand out and use this to prod around, and like I said, I was able to really find the issue right there. Microphonic tube. Again, I was lucky to get this when I did. This is a Weber bias right. It's basically a bias meter. It does have attachments to do 4 tubes in an amp. This does 6V6, 6L6, 6550 style tubes. Measures plate voltage as well. There's a great calculator or formula on Weber page about how to calculate your bias for, cold bias, average bias, hot bias. It's really great. But this this meter is invaluable because it this is just jumpers in between the power tubes. It gives you your reading, it gives you your voltage, and then you can use your findings off of that to calculate proper bias. So I'm glad I have this with all of these amps I have, always maintaining them, always making sure. Gives you a good, if an amp is running good, or an amp checks out all the components at the power tube section checkout. It's almost a good way to check power tubes as well, because you can tell when you have a balanced set. And I am a tube junkie. I buy tubes whenever I can. I love tubes. I love experimenting. And, I've been able to make match sets through, I may have bought 3 at a time, and I was waiting for one more, and then I bought, a bundle of tubes, whatever, but you can match power tubes and things like that. And that's a lot of fun to me because, you find some golden tubes, some golden glass in it. It just makes your amp sound 3D, and you're like, wow, that's amazing. And then you go out and search every set of tubes you can find for that specific model. But this is a must-have tool. myself being a tube junkie, for newer modern day tubes, I'm a big fan of what Tungsol is doing. I really like them. I tend to grab the 12AX and the 12A T7 when I can. And the great thing about these, you can find them on Amazon. They're quite affordable. I also I use a different type of power tube in this because the amp is built to take it. It's like a 6L6, just like a big brother to the 6L6, not a 6550. So I grabbed a set of power tubes too, just in case I needed it. And then these Tube Amp Doctor 5751s, everybody raves about, you know, 5751 tubes. I think that's what I have in here. I'm actually not sure. I just fired up this video without me checking it out. But I think I do have a 5751 in here. And I got a set of these because TAD tubes, the Tube Amp Doctor tubes, are really reliable. I got these from a reputable source. They are a match pair, which these will be going in different sections. I'm a tube junkie, and one of the things I have an abundance of is tubes. Just like if you played a lot, you were a session guitar player, and you know you were constantly playing 6-7 times a week, or it was your full-time profession, you know what I mean? You want to be prepared. You would have strings, picks, you know, a couple of spare cables. You know, I tend to stock up on, you know, all of that stuff, picks, and you know, luckily I use the Kurt Mangan strings. They've been great. They help me out. Proud to be rocking with them. But tubes, I feel, is a big thing to have, you know, to have a full set of, you know, everything put aside. So if your amp goes down, you at least know that you can troubleshoot the tube section of it because you have these spare replacements, you know what I mean? So tubes is a big thing to have as well. I know a lot of guys, it's like, you know, 25 bucks for, you know, a preamp tube or two, but it's 25 bucks I don't need to spend right now because everything's sounding great. But when it does blow, you do need it. You know, we're gonna get in here. I'll get checking in on the amp, and I'll take you guys along. I'm gonna film with a different camera so you guys can check it out. But we're gonna dig in. We're gonna try to find the problem and see what's up. All right, so here we are. Like I said, tapped on this thing, and this is like I said, Tommy Cougar's modified circuit. So he removes the normal channel from the circuit. He also removes the vibrato from the circuit. Now that tube is extremely microphonic, so you know I don't want to make any strong decisions yet, but what we'll do is we'll pull this off. Okay, that's definitely microphonic, right? So we'll start there. Kill the amp. This is going to be a little warm, but it's okay. Pull the tube out. Come and look at what we have. What do we have in there? Okay, so we had an old Jan 5751. Really great tube. I like it. So I knew there was a 5751 in there. Now, believe it or not, this tube is extremely microphonic, but you may put it in another amp and it won't be microphonic at all. So we'll put this here and we'll grab one of the 5751s. One thing I want to mention too with these tubes is it has an indicator, you know, to line this up. These only go in one way. They should fall into the pins before you push them in. So don't ever force these in because you'll bend a pin and probably, you know, wreck a tube. So just make sure you're lining the slot up the right way. So we have the new TAD 5751 installed. Let's fire it up, see what it does. Now this amp is still warm, you know, so usually I would wait a little bit to hit it on standby, but we're doing pretty good. Okay, not as bad, but still bad. So that doesn't necessarily mean that that tube's not bad, even though it's brand new, but we can go down the line here and check. Ooh. You guys hear that? Let's tap this like this. Okay. I think that's the part of the reverb and preamp. Okay, so we're gonna check that one out too, see what that's like. I'm gonna check this phase inverter tube just to be safe. That was pretty quiet. All right, let me look at that one. So the amp made a fool of me. We had a tongue sol 12AX in there that was noisy. But again, like I said, that may work somewhere else and not have an issue. So I got that 12AX popped in, and you know, we're just gonna see what we get. Hopefully this quiets the amp down. You know, with these older amps and the old iron, using a lot of the old components, you're still gonna get some noise, and a little microphonic is actually good to me. I don't like it overly microphonic where it's squealing on its own, but I do like it to the point where, you know, you can get a little bit out of it. You know, you feel it giving something to the tone, a little ghost note there. All right, so there you go. We're quiet there. That's, and that 5751 is still noisy, huh? All right, we still got to look over here. So I just tried the second 5751 in the V2 spot. Still noisy, so it leads me to believe that Tommy designed this amp with a different tube in mind, which, you know, he does do. That's a great thing about Tommy, is each build is personal. So I'm gonna go with one of these tongue sol 12ATs, kind of similar to what a 5751 does. Different gain stage and gain rating. But 12AX, 12AT, 5751, 7025, these are all kind of similar tubes you'll see. They're in the same family. All right, so I drove myself crazy. I went back and forth and just said, screw it. They're all getting upgraded. We get some quiet here, quiet there, quiet there. We do have a little bit here, so I don't know if this makes this video a moot point, but it's not as bad as it was. Again, I can shake, you know, the cables around. They don't reflect through the amp, and, you know, it's just different. It would pick up different noises, you know, so it's a great way to stay on top of things. Not exactly curing it, and I don't expect it to cure it for being an old amp. Also, too, power tubes, you know, they can be microphonic at times. You know, it's one thing to look into. You stay on top of them. You can tap those the same way, and you'll hear a rumble come right through the amp. Just gonna have to roll with it. Once you put the cover on, it ain't so bad. So obviously, you know, this isn't any kind of crazy new reinventing the wheel here. It's just good to keep tubes in stock. Had a little bit of trouble with that V2 one, but that's with the volume up and, you know, the reverb up, and it's not overwhelming. It's not overpowering like that old, you know, Sylvania Jan 5751 was. It was echoing through the entire amp. So I can live with that. And like I said, a little microphonics to me, just like an old wah-wah, just like some old pickups, really kind of brings out this overtone, ghost note characteristic to it, which is kind of cool to have and incorporate it in your playing. This is, like I said, my favorite amp from Tommy. This is just a badass super reverb. It's pushing a lot of power for what it is. It's got the original iron in it, some high-powered speakers, and it's just really, really fun. So I hope this video, you can, you know, use it to your advantage, and I hope that, you know, you guys experiment with tubes. Don't be afraid to try some things and see what kind of fun there is out there in these little pieces of glass. You know, there's a lot of information online. There's a lot of guys who know what works, and they swap stuff in different spots on the amp, you know what I mean? And also, if you can, you know, bring up whatever your amp is, you know, whether it be a deluxe reverb or a Marshall or a super reverb or anything, you know, bring up the circuit and kind of look at it and get familiar and try to teach yourself how things working and how things are run and what goes where and what's doing what, because that's a lot of fun of it, especially, you know, when you have a little bit of knowledge about what's happening inside the amp that you're playing and that you care about and that you you know, eventually want to maintain. It's what I did, and I just I had a lot of fun doing it, and you know, I like to work on these things now. I like when there's an amp with a problem, I like to try to fix it, or, you know, maybe ask the right questions and ask the right people for some help. And usually, you know, you can end up doing it by yourself, and that's the most gratifying feeling, you know. Guys, I want to say thanks so much for watching this video. I'll probably put this out on a Saturday, which is kind of odd for me to have a Saturday video, but it was just something cool. I was sitting down watching some TV, and I said, let me record this. Again, messing with some tubes and super reverb. loads of options, loads of tonal options out there, and depending on what amp you have, you know, you can experiment with tubes and have a lot of fun. So enjoy, guys. We'll talk soon. Peace.